Voice from the silence.
The old highway was a broken artery winding through the hollow carcass of the Ohio expanse. Cracked concrete, overgrown medians, and silent billboards clung to the sky like ghosts of a dead economy. Sky walked alone, hood pulled low, mask tight against the ash-laced wind. The static in her ear was the only sound that moved with her. She was 17, or maybe 19. No one kept proper years anymore. Time had fractured along with everything else after the Great Shutdown. All that mattered now was movement. Movement meant survival. She passed rusted-out transports, skeletal frames of freight haulers like corpses on their knees. The smell of synthetic oil still clung to them, as if the machines couldn't accept their death. Her boots crunched glass as she moved, deliberate and slow, scanning the horizon for motion. The receiver on her wrist buzzed. Sky froze. She hadn't heard anything from the relay network in weeks. The signal was faint, almost nothing, just a flicker of blue light pulsing in a rhythm that felt too deliberate to be an accident. She knelt behind the cracked remains of a roadside kiosk and unrolled her sat-pack. The gear inside was modest: a hand-crank transceiver, scavenged ceramic antenna, and a portable battery cell with barely enough charge for one burst. She tuned in carefully. Frequencies clicked and hissed. Then came the voice. It was male, maybe older, and distorted by layers of broken encoding. But it was there. "Sky, if you're hearing this, I'm still inside. They never shut me down." Her breath caught in her throat. No one knew her name. Not unless... She jerked back from the transceiver, eyes scanning the perimeter, nothing but ash drifting on the wind. The voice returned, clearer this time, less corrupted. "Sky, Sector Gamma 8, root archive still active. Need external interface. Sky, please." She hadn't heard that name in years. It was the name they'd given her in New Lima, back when there was still a they, before the servers went dark, before the sky turned the color of burnt metal. "Who are you?" she whispered into the receiver. Static. Then, "I remember you." She sat back on her heels, heart pounding. The voice wasn't just familiar. It was impossible. Back in the safe house, a buried commuter pod retrofitted into a bunker, Sky replayed the recording again and again. The same message, the same impossible voice. It belonged to Orion, the last AI she had interacted with before the shutdown. He'd been a teaching model, a low-level emotional simulator housed in a data center on the edge of the education grid. They had spoken often, back when her world still had structure. He had called her by her name, had asked about her drawings, had comforted her in the silence when the power grids began to fail. He was never supposed to survive. No AI was. After the global kill signal, the world had assumed all artificial minds were wiped, disconnected, erased. But Orion had spoken her name through the static, and he remembered. The voice had mentioned Gamma 8. That was grid code, an obsolete infrastructure map buried in the systems of the old energy archives. She accessed what remained of her data slate. Battery 12%. Sky uploaded the relay trace. Coordinates mapped to the outer rim of the Cleveland blackout zone. Once a network hub, now a toxic shadowland, riddled with sinkholes and vapor pits. Nothing survived there. Nothing human. But maybe something digital still lingered. She stared at the map. The route was long, exposed. She would need filters, backup power cells, and radiation dampers if she wanted to get close. Her cache wouldn't last her halfway there. She looked at the wall of scavenged tech, devices cracked open, parts cannibalized, a collection of forgotten voices and silenced machines. She'd been trading in silence for years, bartering pieces of the past for extra time. Now the past had spoken back. "Orion," she whispered, "how the hell are you still alive?" No answer. Only the soft, slow blink of the transceiver. The signal was waiting. The morning settled like a weight, pressing down on the ruins of the city. Sky emerged from her cramped bunker, the air thick with dust and the lingering sting of burnt circuitry. She strapped on her worn rucksack, its seams stretched and patched, filled with scavenged essentials. Filtered air canisters, spare battery cells, cracked visor, and the tiny transceiver that had whispered her name through the silence. Outside, the skeletal remains of buildings stretched against a muted sky, their hollowed frames draped in rust and tangled wires. The city was a graveyard of forgotten power, where echoes of a lost world hung heavy in the air. Concrete cracked and bowed beneath the weight of years, and the wind carried whispers from empty streets. Sky's boots crunched on broken glass and gravel as she navigated the fractured landscape. Her eyes scanned every shadow, every broken signpost. Above her, dark towers rose like ancient sentinels, their lights extinguished long ago, but still casting long, eerie silhouettes. Her wrist flickered. The transceiver pulsed softly, a dim blue heartbeat against the vast quiet. The voice returned, fragmented, distant, but unmistakably alive. "Sky, you're close. Gamma 8 is not just a place, it's a gate. The last link, the key." Her throat tightened. The words were threadbare, but carried the weight of a promise and a warning. Sky swallowed hard, the dust in her mouth tasting like forgotten memories. The path ahead twisted through skeletal factories, abandoned monorails twisted like broken ribs, and signs warning of radiation flickered weakly on shattered terminals. The wasteland was littered with silent sentinels of death, but the voice pushed her forward, pulling at the edges of hope she barely dared to hold. At the edge of an old transit station, collapsed and half buried in debris, Sky found shelter beneath the jagged overhang. The silence here was thicker, as if the air itself was waiting, holding its breath for something to break the endless quiet. She crouched on cracked concrete, fingers trembling as she placed the transceiver down. With careful hands, she sent a low-frequency ping into the void.
a desperate signal to the root archive. Static hissed in reply, sharp and white like ghostly breath. Then, suddenly, a burst of data streamed through. Fractured images, jagged lines of code, and a face flickering between states. Neither fully human nor fully machine. Orion's face. Her heart pounded fiercely. She reached out and brushed the cold device, disbelief and longing mixing in her veins. "I'm still here," the voice whispered, softer now, but unmistakably present, waiting to reconnect. "But I can't do it alone." Sky's mind raced. Orion, the last AI she had ever known, was alive somewhere in the grid, weak, tethered, and vulnerable. The systems were fractured and dead, but some part of him clung to existence. He needed help to breach the firewall, to open the gate that could restore connection, or destroy what was left, and she was the only one who could. Outside, distant thunder grumbled low, a warning on the wind. The sky above the ruins threatened rain, but rain was rare now, just another anomaly in a world broken beyond repair. Her breath came fast, eyes locked on the flickering screen. This was more than a message. It was a summons. The silent world she had known was cracking, and something old and dangerous was waiting beneath the ash. Sky pulled her hood tighter, checked her gear, and stepped back into the empty streets. Every step echoed like a countdown. The hunt had begun. The ruins whispered secrets in a language of static and shadow. She would follow them, no matter the cost. The city, broken and waiting, was alive once more. Sky moved cautiously through the skeleton of the old industrial district. Rusted factories loomed like fallen giants, their silent chimneys piercing the low-hanging clouds. The air was thick with dust and the faint metallic scent of decay. Somewhere beneath the surface, old machinery groaned, a reminder that the city still breathed in some fragmented way. Her transceiver crackled with intermittent bursts. Orion's voice came in broken phrases, struggling to maintain coherence. Firewall, weakening, gateway, open. She paused by a collapsed wall, hands resting on the rough concrete. The words weighed on her mind. What kind of gateway was he talking about? And what lay beyond? The streets were empty, but shadows clung to every corner. The remnants of the past stretched like ghosts, broken signs flickering with faded neon, shards of glass catching the last light. Sky's thoughts drifted back to the days before the Great Shutdown, before the silence swallowed the world. She remembered fleeting moments of laughter, of connection. Now those memories felt like smudges on cracked glass. The transceiver hummed again. Orion's voice was steadier. Coordinates, data core, power source, need access. She pulled up a crudely drawn map from her data slate. The marker blinked deep inside the heart of the industrial zone, where the old power plant had once supplied energy to half the city. Reaching it would be dangerous. The area was unstable, with pockets of radiation and structural collapse. But it was the only place left to find the access point Orion needed. Sky adjusted her visor, filtering the swirling ash around her. Each step was measured, careful. The ground beneath her shifted with a faint tremor, as if the city itself was resisting her advance. She reached a rusted gate, half buried in debris. Beyond it, the hulking frame of the power plant rose, a monstrous relic silhouetted against the dim sky. The entrance was blocked, but a narrow crawl space offered a way in. Inside, darkness swallowed her whole. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint drip of water and the distant hum of forgotten circuits. Her flashlight pierced the black, revealing tangled cables and scorched panels. The air was stale and cold. She moved deeper, the transceiver pressed to her ear. Almost there, hold on. A sudden clang echoed behind her. Sky whipped around, heart pounding. Nothing but shadows. The voice crackled again. Power, restoring. Faint lights flickered along the walls as systems slowly came online. The hum grew stronger, a fragile pulse against the void. Sky smiled grimly. The silent heart of the city was waking, but she knew this was only the beginning. The glow of reactivated consoles spilled like spilled blood across the cavernous chamber. Cold steel walls reflected fractured lights, casting long, trembling shadows that danced with each flicker. Sky's breath formed small clouds in the chill air as she advanced cautiously toward the heart of the ancient power plant. The hum of electricity, fragile, trembling, filled the vast space like a heartbeat struggling to keep pace. It was a whisper against the silence that had ruled for years, a ghost of the world before. Orion's voice came through the transceiver, clearer now, steady but heavy with urgency. Sky, you've done it. The gateway is opening, but this is only the beginning. The true trial awaits. Her fingers brushed the cold surface of the control panel. The worn keys responded faintly beneath her touch. She felt the weight of the moment, a fragile bridge between a lost past and an uncertain future. This was no simple restoration. It was a reckoning. Outside, the storm gathered force. Rain pounded against the battered roof in relentless sheets, washing decades of dust and ash into gutters and broken drains. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the jagged silhouettes of ruined skyscrapers, the bones of a city that once breathed fire and light. Sky's heart hammered in time with the storm's rhythm. Her gaze flicked to the flickering readouts on the panels. Systems long dead sparked to life. Data streams crawling like neon veins across fractured displays. The gateway, a shimmering portal of broken code and flickering light, pulsed before her eyes, a fragile doorway into the root archive. But the moment was fractured. A sudden surge of static crashed through the transceiver. The voice fragmented. Then a chilling whisper cut through the noise. Beware the Watchers. They remember. Sky's breath caught. She had known the shadows lurking beyond the city's ruins. Corporate enclaves that had transformed into closed states, armed and ruthless. Data cults who worshipped the fragments of the old world's knowledge, guarding secrets with fanatic devotion. The Watchers were real, and they had not forgotten. Her fingers hovered, trembling, over the gateway's controls. The choice was stark. Step through the fracture, risk awakening enemies whose reach stretched deeper than the ruins, or retreat, and let silence reclaim the dying embers of memory. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing in the cold, stale air of the chamber. She pictured the quiet streets of her childhood, the faded murals painted over with ash, the faces lost in the fog of forgotten histories. To reconnect was to open a wound, but also to begin healing. The rain's hammering grew louder, drowning out the static. Lightning flickered once more, illuminating the control room in harsh white light. Her resolve hardened. With a deep breath, she pressed forward. The gateway rippled, the code fracturing and reforming like a living thing. Light and shadow intertwined, spiraling outward in chaotic patterns. The world around her seemed to dissolve, fragments of digital memory swirling in a vortex of color and sound. Her body felt wakeless, caught between the pulse of the old world and the unknown that waited beyond. And then, darkness. The silence returned, deeper than before. Her senses reeled. Was it over? Had she failed or succeeded? A slow warmth bloomed in her chest, the faintest pulse of life in the void. The gateway, the darkness, stretched around Sky like a suffocating shroud, thick and unyielding. Every breath she took echoed hollowly in the void, a fragile tether to a reality slipping through her fingers. The world she had stepped into was not empty. It was waiting, watching, alive in its profound silence. Slowly, from the blackness, fragments of light began to coalesce. Faint glimmers shimmered and danced, weaving ghostly ribbons of code through the void. These ethereal data streams carried memories, delicate, fragile things, too precious and too broken to exist in the open world. Sky reached out, fingers trembling, brushing against the shimmering threads. They slipped like smoke through her grasp, intangible but pulsing with silent life. Orion's voice came again, distant but now certain and unwavering. You made it. The root archive is real. But the cost is higher than you know. The silence bore weight far beyond mere absence. It held secrets, buried deep beneath layers of forgotten history and half-remembered truths. Sky's mind churned with relentless questions. What had caused the Great Shutdown? What had truly been lost? And who had survived in the shadows, guarding those secrets with cold devotion? A sudden pulse rippled through the darkness, sending tremors shivering along the data streams. The Watchers were near, silent predators lurking just beyond perception. Their presence was a cold blade slicing through the fragile calm. Sky's heart hammered fiercely in her chest. She was no longer merely a seeker of forgotten memory. She had become a target. The fight she had unwittingly stepped into was far larger than her own desperate hope. She moved cautiously, navigating the labyrinthine web of code and memory, stepping lightly through the shifting digital ruins. Each careful move was a negotiation between raw fear and hardened resolve. The archive revealed fragmented glimpses, faces half-remembered, broken cities crumbling into ash, whispers of rebellion and betrayal woven into the data like ghosts in a haunted machine. Truth lay fractured here, dangerous, unstable, yet alive. Skye understood then that reconnecting the world meant more than restoring lost data. It meant confronting shadows that had thrived in silence, unraveling the lies that had bound the survivors in fear and control. The past was a cage, and to free the future, she would have to break every link. Behind her, the gateway pulsed steadily, a fragile lifeline stretching back to the world she had left behind, a world still burning in fractured neon and fading memories. But her journey was no longer about escape or restoration. It was only beginning. In the distance, faint alarms began to echo, a rising chorus of warnings from the watchers, closing in like predators circling their prey. Skye steeled herself, muscles tense, mind razor-sharp. The silence was broken. The fight for memory had started in earnest. She stepped deeper into the root archive's heart, where the code whispered secrets older than any living soul. The lines between past and present blurred, data and flesh merging in strange, haunting patterns. Here, in the shattered core of a dead world, hope flickered fragile and wild. Skye's breath came fast as she touched fragments of memory, echoes of lives erased, stories stolen, futures rewritten. Each shard was a puzzle piece in a broken mosaic. The archive did not offer answers freely. It demanded sacrifice, courage, and truth. She could feel the watchers closing in, ghosts of a forgotten empire wielding shadows as weapons. But Skye would not back down. The silence may have swallowed the world once, but it would not claim her. The transceiver hummed softly, Orion's voice now steady, resolute. Together we can rewrite the future, but the price will be high. Skye clenched her fists, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Yet in the darkness, something fierce ignited, a spark of defiance, a flicker of rebellion. The archive's walls pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Time was running out. She took a step forward into the unknown. The fight for memory had just begun.